Hello, my name is Dan Dennis, and together with Mr. Knitbear, I've published several books about knitting. And for Langyarns, we've made these videos, and Mr. Knitbear will teach you all the basics you need about how to knit a sock. Enjoy!
Hi, my name is Wim. You can call me Mr. Knitbear. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to cast on, how to knit in the round, and how to make the cuff of your sock. First of all, we need to cast on some stitches. You can tell I'm using the Addy Crazy Trio needles. To knit with those needles, you need 3 of them. As you can tell on the box, the stitches will be divided on 2 of the 3 needles, and you'll use the 3rd needle to knit with. But to cast on, I'll move this aside, and I'll move 2 of the needles out of the way. We're just going to use 1 needle. Now for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use a thicker sock yarn. I'm going to use a 6-ply Super Socks yarn and some thicker needles, just so you can see the stitches better. But if you're going to knit some socks from our book, you'll probably need some 2.5mm needles. So the way I'm casting on these stitches is with a length of yarn. I'm taking the yarn over my left hand thumb and index finger, and with the other 3 fingers I'm holding the 2 ends of the yarn so that I create a little triangle shape. I take the knitting needle in my right hand and I'm putting it on top of the little triangle. So I'm going to wrap the yarn once around my needle, and that will be the first stitch on your needle. I'll do that again. So you take the needle, you put it on top of the yarn between your thumb and your index finger, and you wrap it around by making a twirling motion. This will be the first stitch, but this stitch will easily slide off the needles, so you'll have to hold it with your finger. And then I'm going to show you the movements you need to make to cast on another stitch in the Slingshot method. So important is that you twist your thumb and your index finger upward, so that you get a good access to this thread here on the front of your thumb and this thread here that goes to your index finger. So we're going to scoop from front to back under the yarn coming from your thumb, and from back to front behind the yarn that's coming from your index finger. Then we have this little loop on our thumb. You put it over the point of your needle, you pull your thumb out of the little loop and you pull nice and tight. So that's 1 stitch made. Again, pointing your fingers toward the sky, you scoop under the front yarn, behind the back yarn. You lift your thumb over the point of the needle, thumb out, and pull it tight. Now I've got 3 little stitches on my needles. You can use your other method of casting on. If you have another method of putting stitches on your needles, that's fine, but this is the method I prefer. You can do it a bit quicker. Now, because it's only a tutorial, because I don't need to make a full sock, I'm going to cast on a number of stitches, let's say 48. That's an easy number to work with, but because I'm going to knit in the round later, I'm going to cast on 48 stitches and 1 additional stitch. Why I do that, I'll tell you when I get to 49, and I'll come back. Okay, so 47, 48. So if your pattern calls for 48 stitches, you cast them on, all on 1 needle, and then 1 additional stitch that we will get rid of in a second. So now you've got all the stitches, all 48, and 1 additional stitch, so 49 on your needle. Then you grab a 2nd needle, and we're not going to start knitting in the round yet. So the first needle that we are going to knit, that we actually are going to knit, will be a little different. So here's the 2nd needle. Now I'm going to knit 24, or half of my stitches, onto the 1st needle. And then we're going to switch to the 3rd needle. So I'm going to use the stitches I want to use for my cuff. You can choose a variety of cuff stitches. I've got a few of them right here. I'll show you. You can knit 2 and purl 2, so that makes pretty stretchy wide cuff. You can also knit 2 and just purl 1. Then the ribbing in between will be a little narrow. This is a little tighter. Then if you still want to make it more tight, then you knit 1 and you purl 1. You alternate between knitting 1 and purling 1. And if you want a very elastic and very tight cuff, then you knit 1 through the back loop and then you purl 1. So they're all on the same cardboard, so they all look as wide, but this one actually is the most stretchy cuff you can knit. I'm going to choose the first one. So I'm going to knit 2 and then purl 2. And as I said, half of my stitches are going onto the second needle, and the other half plus the extra stitch is going on the third needle. So I'll knit 2 stitches. And I'll purl 2 stitches. Knit 2. Purl 2. And as you can tell, I'm using the continental style. So I'm holding the yarn in my left hand over my index finger. I'm using the right needle to scoop into the next stitch. The yarn is presenting itself, so I already scoop it up through the stitch and it slides off the needle. So that's a right hand, a knit stitch with the yarn in the left hand. For the purl stitch, you have to tilt your work so that the yarn comes in front of your work. You enter as if you're going to purl. You put your index finger down and you help the yarn go through the stitch and to the back. Again, so the yarn is in front of the work. You enter as if to purl. You put the yarn over the needle using your index finger and you push it to the back. You knit. You purl, and then you have to count. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 11, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. So these are 24 stitches, half of the stitches made in knit 2, purl 2. I slide them over to the middle part of the needle so they don't fall off. Then I take the third needle and I just leave the second needle hanging there. And I continue knitting 2 and purling 2. And for people who aren't used to continental style knitting, I can also show you how to do it with the throwing style. So you enter your needle, you throw it around the needle, and you knit. And for purling, you just take the yarn in between the needles, you enter as if to purl, wrap it around, and finish the stitch. So yarn to the back, you knit 2, yarn to the front, and you purl 2 stitches. You can tell that my continental style knitting goes a bit faster, so I'm going to switch back to continental. (21, 22, 23, and also 24 stitches on this needle. Now there's the extra stitch that we cast on. Actually, this is the first stitch that I cast on. I'm not going to knit this, but with the yarn in back, I'm just going to scoop it with the right hand needle. So I didn't knit this stitch. What I'm going to do with this stitch is I'm going to put it in front of the very first stitch that I knit. So I can close the round and I can start knitting in the round. But in order to get rid of this extra loop, you'll have to knit it together with the very first one. So I'll just slide it onto the first needle. These stitches can take a rest. They have to be in the middle of the needle. And then I take my working yarn. I slide the stitches that I'm going to knit onto the tip of the needle. And now I can continue knitting my cuff. And I'll do this by knitting the first two stitches. So this extra loop and this first stitch together. From then on, I'll have 48 stitches on the needles. Give it a good tug so there won't be any gaps. I'll purl 2 and knit 2 and purl 2. And you can do this for as long as you want your cuff to be. So if you like very long cuffs on a sock, you can do this for a very long time. If you don't enjoy knitting cuffs, you can make a shorter one. Just make sure to remember how many rows you knit so that you can make 2 identical socks. And even if you don't want to make identical socks, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no sock police that's going to come and arrest you if you do something a little bit in your own style. I hope this was helpful. Good luck, and I'll see you again when we go start knitting the heel, or maybe some fair knitting in the leg of the sock.